Hey everybody. In the past, we've heard calls for reparations for crimes and injustices committed by the United States government. Usually, these calls are from left-wing organizations and nonprofits everywhere. Well, after thinking about this long and hard and considering the current situation on the ground, I have to agree with left-wing groups. Governments and for-profit companies, nonprofits, as well as individuals who victimize or enable those to victimize American citizens, whether directly or indirectly, and violate their civil rights, they need to start paying reparations to the victims of this sort of discrimination. Specifically, I'm referring to sanctuary cities, counties, and states, as well as every individual, for-profit company, and nonprofit group that funds, conceals, or otherwise enables illegal immigrant criminals to victimize law-abiding American citizens. By refusing to hold illegal immigrant criminals accountable for their crimes, these groups, in my view, are violating crime victims' constitutional rights under the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. Now, while I'm only going to be discussing these lawsuits in the context of wrongful death, I imagine that any victim of a crime perpetrated by an illegal alien could potentially sue sanctuary cities, counties, and states if their laws contributed or enabled illegals within their jurisdictions. So, with that in mind, let's start with wrongful death. So, according to fine law, when a person dies or is killed due to the negligence or the misconduct of another, including murder, the surviving members of the victim's family may sue for wrongful death. Most wrongful death lawsuits follow in the wake of criminal trials using similar evidence but with a lower standard of proof. Regardless, someone found liable for wrongful death may or may not be convicted of a crime associated with that death. For example, former football star and actor O.J. Simpson was found not guilty of murder in 1994 because the prosecution was unable to establish his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. But he was found liable for the wrongful death of the two victims in his civil trial because the plaintiffs were able to prove that he was responsible by a preponderance of the evidence. A suit for wrongful death may only be brought by the personal representative of the decedent's estate. Every state has a civil wrongful death statute, or set of statutes, which establish the procedures for bringing wrongful death actions. Actions for personal injury, conscious pain and suffering, or expenses incurred prior to the decedent's death are also brought by the personal representative. The damage awards from these actions belong to the estate and may pass to different parties as directed by the decedent's will. A wrongful death may arise out of a number of circumstances, such as in the following situations. Now, for purposes of our video, we're only going to be discussing criminal behavior. Note, although wrongful death claims must be filed within the statute of limitations, claims may be filed later in accordance with the discovery rule if the cause of action wasn't determined until later. Damages in a wrongful death lawsuit. Pecuniary or financial injury is the main measure of damages in a wrongful death action. Courts have interpreted pecuniary injuries as including the loss of support, services, lost prospective inheritance, and medical and funeral expenses. Most laws provide that the damages awarded for wrongful death shall be fair and just compensation for the pecuniary damages that result from the decedent's death. If the distributees paid or are responsible for the decedent's funeral or medical care, they may also recover these expenses. Finally, a damage award will include interest from the date of the decedent's death. Punitive damages. Punitive damages are awarded in cases of serious or malicious wrongdoing to punish the wrongdoer or to deter others from behaving similarly. And frankly, I would always ask for punitive damages. In most states, a plaintiff may not recover punitive damages in a wrongful death action. However, I believe in a constitutional violation, one can recover punitive damages by suing in federal court because of the 14th Amendment concerns. There are some states, however, that have specific statutes that permit the recovery of punitive damages. In states that do not explicitly allow or disallow punitive damages in a wrongful death action, courts have held punitive damages permissible. An attorney will be able to advise you as to whether or not your state allows punitive damages. But the thing I would say is this: because it's a constitutional issue, I would do my best to sue in federal court, not state court. Survival actions for personal injury. In addition to damages for wrongful death, the distributees may be able to recover damages for personal injury to the decedent. These are called survival actions, since the personal injury action survives the person who suffered the injury. The decedent's personal representative can bring such an action together with the wrongful death action for the benefit of the decedent's estate. In a survival action for the decedent's conscious pain and suffering, the jury may make several inquiries to determine the amount of damages, including the degree of consciousness, the severity of pain, and the apprehension of impending death, along with the duration of such suffering. Now, according to the Watford-Jackson law firm, they state, the U.S. Constitution guarantees certain rights to each person, including the 14th Amendment protections that no state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Federal Law 42 U.S.C. subsection 1983 provides that both a municipal government employee and the employing government body can be held liable for damages when the said employee violates your constitutional rights while acting under color of law and in keeping with the custom, practice, or policy of the employer. You can make a claim for compensatory damages to compensate you for your actual financial losses, punitive damages to punish egregious wrongdoing and deter similar wrongful acts in the future, injunctive relief, which requires the defendant to take or refrain from certain actions, like enforcement of sanctuary state laws. And of course, the payment of attorney fees if you win the case. Now, they have some examples of constitutional rights violated by local government, but we're only going to look at one, and that is the selective enforcement of laws by city police officers based on an individual's race and or national origin, a violation of the 14th Amendment, coupled with the city's failure to properly supervise and discipline its police officers to prevent such violations. Now, I want you to focus on the national origin argument. If you are an American citizen and you support the Constitution of the United States and all the laws that are based on it, and you are victimized because you are a United States citizen and there's an illegal alien who has perpetrated a crime against you, to me, that is a violation of your 14th Amendment, especially if the sanctuary city, county, or state involved received a detainer notice from ICE and chose to ignore it. Now, with that said, let's talk about sanctuary cities. Now, I have a list right here, and these links will be in the description. These are a list of all the sanctuary cities, counties, and states within the United States. Now, we're just going to go through the states, but the list is right here. As you can see, I'm just going to scroll up and down real quick. So the states are California, Colorado, Illinois, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, and Vermont. Now, the reason I bring this up is because the OJJPAC.org actually keeps a list of every American citizen killed by an illegal immigrant who has entered the United States illegally. And I'm going to kind of showcase just this couple. This is going to be Mr. and Mrs. Wilson. Now, Logan Gage Wilson was 34. He was a father, a husband, a son, and a friend. And he was allegedly killed by Eduardo de Lima Vargas, who was 40 years old. An alleged illegal alien living in Hubbard, Oregon, was arrested for the death of the Salem, Oregon resident Logan G. Wilson, 34, and his wife. Now, his wife's name is Jessica Lynn Wilson, and she's right under here. According to news reports, on August 19th, 2018, Lima Vargas was allegedly driving his horse trailer and truck drunk, ran a red light, and crashed into the Wilsons' motorcycle in Salem. The Wilsons were pronounced dead at Salem Hospital that day. The Wilsons are survived by their children and many family members. They were laid to rest together on August 29th, 2018. Okay, so this entire webpage, and I've only scratched the surface of it, is created by this guy, Steve Salvi. And he states, these deaths could have been prevented if Congress and the executive branch would have secured our border and enforced U.S. immigration laws. Now, I agree with that, but I also think that these sanctuary cities are really interfering with our government's ability to enforce these sanctuary city laws, and they need to be held accountable for it. So, to me, sanctuary cities, as well as individuals and organizations who finance or otherwise enable illegal immigrants to have the ability to avoid legal accountability for their crimes are guilty as accomplices both under federal law and every state law within the United States. Since the federal government appears to be refusing to hold these illegal immigrant trafficking sanctuary state and local governments accountable, I believe the best tool under the United States Constitution to hold these bad actors accountable is to sue these governments into the Stone Ages for enabling illegal immigrants to prey upon law-abiding American citizens when these governments should have been arresting them instead. I believe these governments are violating American victims' 14th Amendment constitutional rights every time they harbor a federal fugitive who is in the process of committing a federal crime. And make no mistake, illegal immigrants are federal fugitives whose presence in the United States is a federal crime. So if it can be determined that ICE requested a detainer for the illegal in question and it was ignored by state or local government authorities, and then that illegal kills or otherwise victimizes an American citizen, I believe that government has violated that crime victim's 14th Amendment constitutional right and should be sued into the Stone Ages for it. If we want to stop this, to me, the most effective way for loved ones and those victimized by illegal immigrant crime who are protected by sanctuary governments is, again, to sue these governments into the Stone Ages for violating American citizen victims' 14th Amendment constitutional rights. Once these sanctuary governments start getting sued into the Stone Ages, watch how fast they repeal all their sanctuary laws that, in all honesty, should have never been implemented in the first place.